You probably don't know much about Grover Cleveland. If you're from the United States, then you may be aware that he served 2 terms as president in the late 1800s. If you read about what he did during those terms, then you've seen that he took strong stances on tariffs, trade rates, and the gold standard before fading into an historical footnote. Unfortunately, I've learned that there's a lot more to him than that. A lot more. I don't have much time, so I'm going to do my best to write this down before the people outside break in. All of this happened because of Stephen. I thought I was being cautious when I let Stephen back into my life. We lived together once, for a few months. It had been wonderful, but then he came home from work one day, telling me we needed to have a talk. I told him, sure, what about? His boyish, smoothly shaven face took on a vulnerable look. It dawned on me that he had something serious to say. He sat with me, still in his deputy uniform, and told me that he had something to confess. At first, I refused to believe him. I told him this must be a sick joke. Stephen wasn't like that. What kind of man cheats on his girlfriend only to fess up to it unprompted?
I want to be honest with you,
said Stephen.
I'm so sorry. If you think I should go, I'll leave right now.
I couldn't deny it anymore. He was being serious. I cupped my hands around my wet eyes. The day Stephen moved out, he texted me that he left me something under the pillow. 3 months' rent was stuffed in the envelope. I still didn't forgive him, not yet at least. The next few months were brutal. I'd never had much in terms of friends and family, so I struggled through the initial period of loneliness that followed Stephen's departure. 4 years passed before I saw Stephen again. I told Rachel to stay where she was as I answered the knocks at the door.
We've received a report of a domestic disturbance,
announced a familiar voice. Oh, I gasped upon seeing him. Stephen,
Sandy,
said Stephen, briefly losing his composure. He now wore a full-fledged sheriff's uniform.
I had no idea it was you who called. Are you okay? Dispatch said
that my boyfriend hit me. I turned my head so that Stephen could see the mark.
That bastard. Step outside. I'll handle this.
Stephen, I called. Don't hurt him, okay? I covered Rachel's eyes as Stephen dragged Benjamin across the yard and into the back seat of his car. Stephen stopped by the next morning. He said he was there to gather Benjamin's belongings.
When he gets out, I'll give these to him, and I'll see to it that he doesn't bother you again.
I thanked Stephen. He asked if he could come in. Sure, I said, but just for a bit. I felt like I owed him that much. He sat down as I made him a cup of coffee.
Ma, where's Pa?
Asked Rachel as she examined Stephen. He's away, just for a little while, I told her. Do you miss him? Rachel shook her head.
Now what's your name, young lady?
Asked Stephen.
Rachel, I saw you last night.
That's right,
said Stephen.
Now how old are you, Rachel?
I'm 3.
Well, isn't that great? Do you know how old I am?
Rachel shook her head again.
I'm 183 years old.
Rachel laughed.
No, you're not.
You got me,
said Stephen.
I'm only 39.
11 years older than me. When he left, Rachel was smiling as widely as I was.
I like Stephen,
said Rachel. Stephen stopped by the next day, and the next. I let him stay a little longer each time. Rachel was always happy to see him. Stephen began to bring children's books, usually ones focused on American history, to read to her.
You must get lonely here, raising Rachel all by yourself,
said Stephen to me one day. It's better than when Benjamin was around. I don't know why I stayed with him for as long as I did. I felt trapped.
Well, You don't have to worry about him anymore.
said Stephen.
Look, Sandy, I know I wronged you once. Maybe I don't even deserve a second chance. But I can tell you, what happened then is in the past. I haven't even talked to her in years. And nothing like that is ever going to happen again.
I thought long and hard about what he was suggesting. The selling point was how well he got along with Rachel. Within a few weeks, Rachel and I had moved out of my crummy apartment and into a small house with Stephen. He'd changed a bit since I last lived with him. For one, he read consistently. When he wasn't working, he left the television on a C-SPAN channel that aired discussions about new books. At first, it annoyed me, but I eventually accepted it. At least he wasn't blasting Fox News all day.
You think Trump will run again?
I shrugged. Yeah, probably.
Well, if he wins, he'll be the second president to serve 9 consecutive terms. You know who the first president to do that was?
I don't know. What difference does it make?
Oh, come on, Sandy. At least take a guess.
Rachel's high-pitched voice piped up.
It was Grover Cleveland.
There you go, you little bookworm.
Rachel giggled. I adjusted to his new quirks. They were harmless, after all. Life started to return to where it had been before. I sometimes sighed when I thought of how Stephen had sidetracked my life by messing around with another girl like that. It's like he'd sapped 4 years from me. But I forgave him. He was loving and supportive of both me and Rachel. And I cared about him enough that I felt a twang of fear for his safety each time he left for work. The first strange thing happened when we were both in bed together late one night. We'd just screwed around and he was catching his breath while he held me in his arms. Stephen,
Yeah?
you said something strange a minute ago while we were, you know. He told me he didn't think he'd said anything. No, I'm sure of it, I insisted. You were looking down at me and you said Maria. He denied it.
No. If I said anything, maybe it would have been your full name, Sandra.
The silence that followed prompted him to add.
And no, I don't even know anyone named Maria, so I would have never said that, okay?
Okay, I said. I didn't think much of it at the time. The next Saturday morning, I cooked Stephen a large breakfast of corned beef hash and eggs. I chided him when he sloppily shoveled it into his mouth, too immersed in a biography he was reading to display basic manners.
Did you know
He said in between bites.
that the United States government used to have to purchase 4.5 million ounces of silver each month?
That sounds expensive, I said, only half listening as I used a napkin to clean off his mouth.
It sure was.
Said Stephen.
But President Cleveland put a stop to that.
The napkin scraped against his stubble. Stephen, are you going to shave anytime soon? Doesn't the sheriff's office have regulations against facial hair?
Huh? No, it's fine, don't worry. I'm in charge after all, so who's going to say anything?
Rachel loved pulling at the mustache that he steadily grew out over the next few months. She could never wait to spend time with him.
When's Dad coming home?
She'd ask after I picked her up from preschool. I loved that she called him that. We continued to live happily together. I dropped hints about marriage and couldn't wait for him to formally ask the question. The only hiccup was that Stephen, who'd always been slim, started putting on weight. I cooked a healthy breakfast for him and encouraged him to work out.
Hey, I know you're only looking out for me,
Said Stephen as he turned a page in the biography.
but this is just a temporary thing. I'll get back in shape once I get through the next few weeks of work.
He kissed me. I spent a few weeks that fall preparing for a party Stephen had agreed to host at our house to commemorate his first full year as sheriff. When the night of celebration arrived, I served refreshments to a crowd of deputies and their families. After a full hour of tending to the guests, I took a quick break. A tall, scrawny deputy joined me where I sat on a living room couch.
You're the wife, aren't you?
Or not.
Oh, sorry, right. I'm Deputy Hawkins. You can call me Teddy. Stephen and I go way back.
How far back?
We went to school together as kids, actually.
So, you're also from Cottonwood? I asked. He looked confused.
No. Stephen and I are both from Cadwell.
There's a Cadwell in Tennessee?
Ma'am, you must be confused. We grew up in Cadwell, New Jersey.
I told him that my boyfriend never lived in New Jersey, but he continued to insist otherwise. Look, I know where the man I'm living with is from, okay?
Whatever you say, ma'am.
A young woman joined us. Teddy introduced her as his daughter, Frances, who was home on fall break from her senior year of college. I've heard so many wonderful things about your boyfriend, she said. From how Dad describes him, we're so lucky to have him as sheriff. You know, keeping the streets safe and looking after all of us. She was blushing. I laughed. Well, I'm glad to hear him spoken so well of. He's great with Rachel, too. That's my 3-year-old. She's upstairs with a babysitter. Oh, I know all about Rachel, said Frances. She loves it when Stephen reads to her from his history books. Oh, did your dad tell you that? It surprised me that such a specific detail would get from Stephen to her. Before Frances could respond, one of Stephen's colleagues silenced the room for a toast in Stephen's honor. The crowd slowly died out as the party stretched into the late hours. When the babysitter had to leave, Frances volunteered to look after Rachel. To my delight, Rachel seemed to get along with Frances, as well as she did with Stephen. I started cleaning up. By this point, only a handful of guests remained, and they were all drinking with Stephen. I was folding up picnic chairs outside when Teddy stumbled over to me. You're not driving Frances home like that, are you?
Ma'am, who do you think is gonna arrest me?
I sighed. Well, please at least sit here for a little while until you sober up. Teddy plopped into one of the remaining chairs.
You know what we call Stephen at work?
Sheriff? He laughed.
No, he's got a nickname. We call him the Executioner. When he corners a criminal, you know, one of them real bad fellas who hurt a kid or a defenseless woman, he draws his sidearm and pow! They ain't getting off with no technicality.
As he spoke, he formed a gun with his hand and pretended to fire it. That's not funny, I said. He looked at me with dead seriousness for a few moments before bursting into laughter.
I had you going, didn't I?
Yeah, I said, dryly. You sure did,
I know about that guy who hit you.
said Teddy.
Benjamin, right?
Yeah,
You ain't seen him since Stephen showed up, have ya?
I froze. No, but Stephen said. Teddy winked.
Yeah, Benjamin's doing just fine now. Not gonna give you any more trouble.
Stephen didn't.
Oh no, ma'am, you don't need to worry. Benjamin's definitely alive and well.
He winked again as he chuckled. I stormed back inside. I hated Benjamin for how he treated me, but I didn't want him to be hurt. What Teddy was suggesting was too terrible for me to fathom. He was nowhere on the ground level, but Rachel was there, unwatched, as she napped on the couch. Stephen? Stephen, I called. When I reached the top of the stairs, I found Stephen and Frances outside our bedroom. Stephen's hair was unkept, and his shirt was half unbuttoned. What are you two doing in here? I asked.
Oh, hey Maria.
mumbled Stephen.
I was just showing Francis some of my history books.
You did it again. You called me Maria. Why? Whoa, easy there, said Francis. He didn't say that. He called you Sandy. Exasperated, I spoke in a rushed, angry tone. And you, what are you doing up here? You agreed to watch,
Mama.
called Rachel. I turned around to find her. She'd woken up and climbed the stairs on her own. Hey there, sweet pea, I said. Let's bring you to bed, okay? To my surprise, Rachel crawled past me. Frances got to her knees and embraced Rachel, picking her up,
There you are, Mama.
said Rachel, as she stroked her hand against Frances's cheek.